Hey, this is Andrew Brown from Exam Pro. In this fall along, we're going to be looking at role-based access controls, also known as RBAC. I'm going to tell you right now, they're a pain to set up. They're such a pain. And there's two types. We have cluster roles, like cluster stuff, and then there's just roles, and those are namespace, which we do cover in the course. We're not going to do both because we just be here all day, and we really don't need that for the KCNA. But I do want to set up a role for a particular user, and then restrict some resources. Okay, so I'm just going to type in clear here. Make sure you launch that micro K8s environment. And this is a little bit tedious and painful, but we will get through it. And we might have to kind of like piece it together because it was a lot of work for me to get a working solution here. So if you can't get through it, don't worry. Just watch along if you do get stuck and just understand all the components that go involved. But I'll get through it here on video here, so do not worry. But what we'll do is type in micro K8s, K8s status. And we have the ability to enable it. And I just want to note, if we do RBAC Kubernetes here, normally what you would do, but we're using micro K8s, but normally what you would do is you would have to specify when you start your cluster, the API server, you'd have to tell it to run in authorization mode of RBAC. Now, we don't have to do that. We just have to enable it here. So just understand that that's abstracted away for us. But if you do see on the exam that flag, just remember what it does, okay? And so what I want to do is just enable RBAC. It's right here. There it is. And we'll go ahead and hit enter. And we'll give it a moment to enable. It shouldn't take too long. See, it's reconfiguring the API server, so it's likely adding that authorization mode flag so that it is enabled, and there it is. Okay, so I'm looking for my super complex instructions for just the role. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need a way of identifying our users, and there's a few different ways to do that. If we go to authentication Kubernetes, don't worry if you can't say it. I can't say it half the time or spell it. But we have a few different ways that we can authenticate. And it should say here the list. So certifications, bearer tokens, there's 3 ways. And it's not showing it here. Well, let me double check. Let's go to the top here. I remember being the 2 at the top. Maybe it's not this page. Maybe it's controls here. Well, I'm going to tell you, I'm not sure where the page is, but I can tell you that there are 3 ways, at least 3 ways of doing it. So one's using a certificate, another one is having a bearer access token, and there's another way. They're not going to ask you on the exam, so it's not a big deal. Maybe like the security exam, that would be where that would matter. But what we're going to do is we're going to generate out a certification, because that was the one that I found the easiest to understand, even though there's a lot of steps involved. So what we'll have to do is generate out ourselves a certificate. And so we're going to use OpenSSL to do that. So we'll type in OpenSSL. We're going to type gen RSA, because RSA is the type of cryptographic thing that we want to do there. We'll type out to output the thing that we're generating here, the key, and then we'll put the name. So I'm going to call everything developer just to make things easier. You could put the name like Andrew or something here, but just stick with me here and do developer because it becomes super hard to swap this all out. So 2048, I believe, is the length of the key that we want. We hit enter and it generates out our RSA private key. So now that we have our RSA private key, we need to create or generate a client-side sign request, a CSR. Don't ask me what that is. I do not remember, but I just know that we need to do it. So we'll type in OpenSSL REQ new -key developer.key -out developer.csr. That's what we want to generate out, a CSR, SBJ. And then which stands for subject, and then we have this very special syntax. So CN is going to be the user's name, which is developer. We don't want to make a mistake. And then O, capital O, equals is going to be the group. Because remember, RBACs can have users and groups. We're going to call it developer as well. We could call it developers, but again, for simplicity, we're just going to call it developer. Okay, I'm going to double check to make sure that's okay. And if you're wondering, like, where did I get all these instructions? Also notice we got this error. So it's possible that this line didn't work. I remember getting this error. So let me look here because I did have a fix for it. Can't load root R&D. Okay, so I think it's like R&D. Here, let's just look it up and see if we can find it very quickly. So they say, try removing or commenting out rand line in this thing. Yeah, that was the problem here. So this is maybe a weird problem with Ubuntu. And so I almost didn't catch that error there. I'm going to do ls. Did it generate out that CSR? It shouldn't, because it wouldn't have worked. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And then what we're going to do, I grabbed that line over here, this one here, and we're going to have to open this up. Normally we could do like C9 and file name, but unfortunately, like last time I did npm install, I could try it right now and see if it works. npm install this would install the C9 client. I should be able to do C9 and then do this, but it's not opening up. So I think it's because we're on Ubuntu and not Amazon X2, so I'm just going to clear that out. And so since we can't use Cloud9 to easily open it, we'll have to open up in Vi. And Vi is a big pain because every key matters, okay? So I'm going to hit enter. And before you touch your keyboard, understand that every single key doesn't act like a normal key. So if I hit J, it goes down. If I hit K, it goes up. If I go L, it goes right. Okay, if I go H, it goes left. All right, every key is bound to something, so you gotta be very careful. So what we're gonna do is hit J until we get down to this rand line, and then we're gonna hit I to go to insert mode. Look down below, it says insert mode here, and now your keyboard acts like a normal keyboard. And your cursor, even though it selects the R, it's actually in front of it, and we're gonna make a pound. Okay, that's gonna comment it out. Now to get out of insert mode, we'll hit escape on our keyboard. Okay, left, and now do colon to execute commands within this, right for W, Q for quit. And the problem is we're in read-only mode, so I had to do sudo there. So what I'll have to do is do colon, Q, exclamation mark, and then hit up, Control A to go to the front, sudo, enter, and it brought me back to the same spot. So we'll go I, insert mode, pound, escape. Notice insert mode's out, so now we're in normal mode. Colon WQ. I use Vim as my primary layout or keyboard layout, so for me it's normal, but a lot of people aren't, and just gotta be very careful there. So we've updated the OpenSSL CNF, and so what we'll do, if it generated a key, I don't trust it, so I'm going to delete it because I don't want to see that message there, and we'll hit up until we get back to this one. Okay, notice no errors. We'll hit up. Can we get this one? No errors, good. Now the question is, where am I getting these crazy commands? Well, the only way is to look up tutorials, because if you go on the Kubernetes docs, they do not help whatsoever. So at least like the Kubernetes docs is good in some places, bad in other places. But I'm just trying to find the article I had. So it'd be like RBAC with Kubernetes. And I think it was like in Minikube that I used. So I had to adopt this. RBAC, probably would spell it right so we can find it easily. Because one of the key skills of learning Kubernetes is being able to find solutions. And so this is the fellow that made one. I don't know if he has a video, but generally, like a lot of these commands are here. Yeah, I think he has a video. I didn't watch it. I just kind of like went through and kind of adapted it to my needs. But a lot of that stuff, you just got to look for it or understand how this stuff works. So we generated out our CSR. We fixed the RNG problem. And so now the next thing we need to do is we need to generate out a CRT. Okay, and so that's just another thing we need to generate out. But before we do, we need the CRT. These are cert certificates for Kubernetes. So if I type in Kubernetes certifications, or maybe certificates, because it's not certifications per se. And we go maybe here. Nope, that's not it. Maybe here. That's not it. I'm just looking at I got the links here. I'm just trying to Google it so we can find it. Best practice certifications. Okay, so Kubernetes best practices. You can only imagine how much time I spent looking this stuff up. And we go here, and so what we're looking for is where these certificates are. So when you install your Kubernetes cluster, it generates out all these different kinds of certificates. So these certificates are used to validate authenticity of things, right? So you say, okay, this is your certificate. We'll bind them together somehow and double check and things like that. So we need to have the CRT and the CA key. And so we need to know where these are. Now, if you're using Minikube, they install in a particular place. If you're using micro K8s, they install a particular place, but this is where they are by default. So micro K8s is somewhere else. And so if we want to know where it is, I think we'd have to look up like micro K8s auth. Okay. So if we go to the docs here, I think it might be under service imports. And if we scroll on down here, it shows you here, var snap, micro 8s, current certs. So this is where they are. So what we'll do is copy this directory, and we're going to do ls, and then paste it in to see where they are. And we can see we have csrconf, cube, etc., etc. There they are, ca.key, and then cr.cert. So this is where they are. And so now that we have that, we now need to type this big old ugly command here. So open SSL X509, which is a type of certificate or something. I've seen 509. I don't really know what it is, even though I've seen it for years. We'll say developer.csr, because we're going to need that. And then we do -ca, and then we have -ca key, and then we have -ca create serial, and then out developer. We didn't type everything in. I'm just kind of just like filling out the obvious stuff. And then what we'll do is fill in these ones here. So we got to fill in a value here. Okay, we got to fill a value in there. So what we need is, and we'll open up our README to make this a little bit easier. I'm just going to go ahead and delete the contents here. But I need this address. Actually, just to make this easier, I'm going to copy this here because this is such a pain to type. And we'll paste it in here. And then I'm going to grab the contents here. Just in case we make a mistake and we have to type this like 100 times. Or like execute it 100 times. And so here we want CA cert. And here we want, this is CA key. Yeah. Okay. And so this is the big old line that we need. So what we'll do, whoops. Did I mess that up? Okay, so we'll copy that line. Just clear this one out. Oops. Again, I'll copy this line again. Yank, paste. Looks okay. Hit enter. And can't open for reading no such file or directory. Okay, so I'll double check one more time. Clearly made a mistake. Oops, sorry. ls. Oh, CRT. Sorry, I wrote cert. Here. Okay, so I'm going to yank that line. Oops, didn't get it. Try one more time. It's a bit hard to copy. I don't want to wrap the text. There's a way of wrapping it, but it's just like, then I have to unwrap it, so. Hit enter. Okay, and it generated out our CRT. Are you lost? Okay, so let's create a user now. So the way we do that is we're going to type in kubectl config set credentials developer -- client certificate equals developer.crt -- client -key developer.key. If you hear rumbling, I don't know if you can hear it, but my stomach's been like rumbling through a lot of the labs. So if you hear like a rumbling sound, it's probably my stomach. kubectl config set credentials developer. That's the developer that we want. The client credentials developer CRT client -key developer.key. We'll hit enter. And I typed it wrong. So that would be a problem. Oh boy, it's acting funny. So what I'll do is I'll just copy the contents here. And if we do want to make this easier, I could just do this. So my life is not so painful. This backslash allows you to do multi-lines. Okay, so client probably should be spelled right. Paste that in there. It didn't take it. 1 second. We'll try this again. Clear. Paste it in again. It's not taking it. Okay, we'll make it one line. All right. I don't know why it's being silly, but whatever. So we'll copy this again. That or there actually is an error. Okay, I just can't tell if it's a multi-line error here. It's missing the Y here. There we go. Okay, so the developer has been set. So now we have created our user. And if you want to see the users, there's a command. It's called kubectl config view -o. Because like if you do view, you get a bunch of this stuff, right? And so this config file shows us things. So we can see admin and developer there. If you want to be really clever, you can do parsing. So if you do -o, you can pass it like JSON path, which is I think it's like JQ syntax. There's a name for that syntax. I can't remember what it's called. I covered it in one of my other courses. Asterisk, and then we say .name here. Okay, and did I type that right? No, I forgot the equals here. And so we get the names, but really all it's doing is it's just parsing it through and grabbing out the admin and developer. So we can see that we have 2 users. Whoops. I just wonder if this is actually the same contents as, let me just type clear again. So type in view again here, 1 second. So this is that file, but I wonder if this is the same file as our kubectl. So if we type in cat, which just means concatenate, like to print out, and we go kube config, I wonder if it's just the same darn file. It's similar. So notice like there's some additional stuff here. So we have certificate authority, which is this big old string here, server, micro K8s, and we have context, kind, config, user preferences. But notice that when we do config view, it's just a shortened version. So, here it is. So look, it says data omitted. So it is the same file. It's just that it's obscuring that just in case for security, because I would assume you do not want to share your certificate authority data. I'm not worried about it because this is locked in on a VM and this will be deleted by the time you get to see it. So I'm not too worried about it. But yeah, so all it did was really add it here and then provide those links there. That was that big fancy link that we did with the set credentials there. So now the next thing we need is a context. So a context is to say, what user are we right now? So these are the users, possible users, and the things that we need to authenticate them with. Notice this one uses a token to authenticate, but here are the contexts. So right now we are the micro K8s cluster, and that's the context for this cluster, because you could have multiple clusters that you want to connect to, and then this is the user that we are. We're the admin user, okay? And this is for micro K8s. So what we'll do is we can see our current context by typing current config current context. It'll just show us who we are, current context. So I don't see here, oh, it's right here, right? Okay, so if we hit that, we are micro K8s right now. That's who we are. And so, yeah, because the name is micro K8s. The context is called micro K8s. Okay. And so now what we can do is we can switch our context. So, or actually we need to make a new context, sorry, because we don't have a context for our developer yet. So we'll type in kubectl config set context developer -- cluster equals micro K8s cluster, and then -- user equals developer. Okay. And so now if we go back and we view, you can now see that we have a context here, and just make sure the cluster is correct. If that's wrong, we'll end up with an error. So we haven't switched context yet. We are still this context here. But one thing we'll want to do is we will want to set some permissions here. But before we do, I just want to show you a command to say, what do we have access to? So there's a thing called kubectl auth. And auth, we have this thing that says can I, and we can say list pods. And so if I say this, it'll tell me whether I'm allowed to list pods. This is a way of checking role-based access controls before we even set them, okay? And if we were a developer, I can say as equals developer, can I right now? Oops. Say -- as developer. Am I allowed to look at it? It says no. So I created this new user, and it's not the admin user, and so it doesn't have any access when we first created it. So if we were to switch over to it, like if we typed in kubectl, I'm trying to remember how we switch here. Oh, it's config use context developer. Really got to learn how to type properly. And so if we type in kubectl get pods, we have no access. This is forbidden, right? You don't have any privileges You're not allowed to do this. Okay, so what we need to do is create some role-based access controls to allow them to have access to those pods. So what we'll do is go back and switch to back to our micro K8s. We'll just type clear here, and that's where we need to create ourselves a role and a role binding. So what I'll do, I'm just pulling up my example here, and then we'll do is type in role Rbac, or sorry, role Kubernetes, and get some example code. So we'll go to using Rbac authorization, we'll scroll on down, and here is basically the same example that we want. So I'll make a new one in our K8s folder here, new file, role.yaml. We'll paste that on in there. This one's called pod reader. Sure, we'll leave it as is. That's totally fine. And then we need a role binding. I don't know why they go like role in the role cluster. They really should show you end to end, but this is how they do it. And so if we go down, I'm just looking for one that looks like the one that we need. These ones are all very silly. Role binding. I guess we'll use this one, even though I really don't like it. We'll have to adjust it. This is this one here as well. Oh, this is the one I think we wanted. Role binding examples. Okay, so we'll go back here. We'll make a new file. Role binding. YAML. Okay, and I'm just going to double check because I might have modified this a bit. Yeah, mine's a lot more easier to read. So we'll just take out these comments here so that we can just see what we're doing. I just don't want any of this stuff in so I can see what's going on, just to make sure that it's right. So the idea here is that we have a role binding kind, and then we have our metadata, read pods, which is fine. The namespace is fine. So the subject, the kind is going to be user. The name is going to be developer, because that's what we called our developer user. And so that's the subject. Now we need to have the role reference. And so I think it's called pod reader. So if we go back to the one, looks good to me. And then if we go back, we'll just, yep, that's fine. We'll save it, make sure that little dot is cleared. And so that should be good. So we are good to set these up. So we'll say kubectl apply -f role.yaml. I wonder if we can do multiple files like this. I don't ever try. Does that work? Nope. That or I typed it wrong. So I'll just hit enter. Oh, you know what? We probably can do it. Let me just try this. Let me just try this to see if this works. All right, well, if there is a way to doing multiple ones, I have no idea how to do it. And then we'll just say role binding.yaml. There we go. And let's go take a look at what those look like. So we say get kubectl get role. And we'll say describe the role. Okay, so get watch list, pods, all good there. And then we'll say get role binding. Okay, read pods, pod reader, and then we'll say describe it. Whoops. Describe, user developer, that's who's allowed to use this role. So now let's go back up. Remember that auth command we had? Here it is. As developer, can they use it? Yes. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll switch context. We'll say kubectl. Already forgot what the command is. It is config, use context, developer. I have to type use. And we'll say kubectl get pods. Kubectl get pods. You got to spell it right for it to work. And then we'll try svc. Oh, our Juice app is running again. Huh. We had destroyed the deploy prior, so it shouldn't be running, but I guess it's still running, whatever. Anyway, so notice that we get a denied access for services, but we can get it for pods. So it is working as expected. I'm going to just switch back to micro K8 so we're not confused. And that's all I wanted you to learn. There are role-based clusters, and they're really a pain to set up, and it's just really time consuming. But if you really want to know how, I know there's a few tutorials. If we say Rbac, cluster role, 100 days of Kubernetes, I know that there is a good example there. I'm just going to pull it up here. If you want to look at it yourself, If you are on the Exam Pro platform, all these links are there for you, just so you know. But let me take a look here. I'm trying to find the example. Can't really find it, but let's say RBAC micro K8s tutorial. Roll. Ah, yes. So, Anis, I don't know how to pronounce her name. I know her. She's super nice. She's on Twitter. And so she goes here, and I think she's just create a role and cluster role. She does a cluster role one. And so if we go through here, that's a role. So they create a role. I guess she does both. But let's just take a look at cluster role here. So for cluster role, you have to create a service account. You'll have to set up verbs, right? Set what resources. Oh, yeah, this is where the sticky part was. So in order to, I guess it's not hard, but she was using this third-party library, and I just did not want to use it. Because then you have to install crew and do that. And so probably there's a way I could figure it out. But, you know, honestly, we don't really need to learn cluster roles. It's not that big of a deal. They're very similar to roles. They're just not namespaced, right? So you won't see a namespace in them, and they're for workloads and not necessarily, or sorry, like they're scoped at the cluster roles. But what was interesting was service account, because service account isn't a user. It is a, like for workloads and stuff like that. But I figured just doing a role and stuff that is fine for KCNA, and just conceptually understanding the other ones is good enough. So what we'll do is close off these other tabs. We'll close this off here. This one and this one, and that's all I wanted to show you for RBAC, okay?